I'm sitting on the vinyl edge of an intake bed when my uncle leans over the clipboard and taps his pen like he's signing my fate. "She's losing touch with reality," he tells the admitting nurse, voice smooth enough to slide right past my protests. Heat climbs my throat. My late mother's brass coin burns a circle into my palm. If they believe him over me in this locked ward, every time he's twisted, the truth becomes my diagnosis instead of his crime. The light in here hums louder than it should. It's that fluorescent buzz that crawls under your skin, vibrating behind your eyes. The walls are a tired off-white, too clean and too stained at the same time, every scuff mark scrubbed but not erased. The air smells like lemon disinfectant poured over old fear. The admitting nurse clicks her mouse, looks up at me, then over at him. Her badge bounces against her chest as she shifts her weight, the plastic sleeve flashing my full name on her screen. "Can you tell me what brings you in today?" she asks. But her eyes flick sideways to my uncle, like the real answer is sitting in his throat. "I can," I say, sitting forward, the paper sheet crinkling under me. "She's been fixated," he cuts in, soft and quick, like we rehearsed it together. "Since my sister passed, she's barely sleeping. She keeps accusing me of all kinds of things. Money, paperwork, she's not herself." The nurse's pen moves faster when he talks. When I talk, it pauses, hovering, as if my words are the part she's supposed to double-check later. "I'm grieving," I say, and I'm asking reasonable questions about the estate. There are withdrawals that don't... "She believes I'm stealing from her," he says, almost apologetic, turning toward the nurse so she can see the strain in his face. It's gotten worse. She gets agitated, she yells. She thinks everyone is lying to her. The word agitated lands on the keyboard with a soft tap as the nurse types it. I squeeze the coin in my hand until the ridges bite. I can see my mother's profile in the shine of it in my mind. The way she used to rub the same circle when bills piled up on the kitchen table. "Any history of mental illness in the family?" the nurse asks. "On her mother's side," my uncle answers immediately. "She struggled with moods, paranoia, never formally diagnosed, but it was there." I swallow. My chest tightens like someone has looped a blood pressure cuff around it and forgotten to press release. The only diagnosis my mother ever had was exhaustion and a heart that gave up too early. But that kind of truth doesn't come with proof you can staple to a chart. "I don't recall anyone telling me my mom was crazy while she was alive," I say. "Only now that there's money involved." The nurse glances at me properly for the first time, then back at the screen. Her face is neutral, trained. Her fingers keep moving. The door hisses open and the psychiatrist steps in. A short woman in a navy blazer over hospital scrubs, glasses sliding down her nose. She checks the bracelet the nurse just snapped onto my wrist, the white band still warm from her fingers, my name and a barcode in blocky black lines. "I'm Dr. Han," she says. "I'm just going to ask you some questions." My uncle straightens like a man at a job interview. He knows how this part goes. "They ask about sleep," I say, "a few hours a night on and off since the funeral." "She's up all night," my uncle adds, shaking his head. "Sending long emails, accusing me of hiding things. It's been months." "They ask about appetite." I shrug. Food tastes like cardboard over the bitter edge of anxiety. Some days I forget to eat until my hands shake. "She's losing weight," he says, "not taking care of herself. I'm worried." They ask, "Any thoughts of hurting yourself?" I open my mouth, shut it, then say, "No, I had a panic attack 2 years ago. I went to the ER. They said it was stress." "She tried to drive off the bridge," my uncle murmurs, not looking at me. "She doesn't remember it that way. That's part of the problem. She minimizes." I turn to him. "That's not what happened," I say, my voice sharper now. "I pulled over because I couldn't breathe and I called you. You're the one who..." Dr. Han holds up a hand, palm calm, almost bored. "Let's slow down," she says. "I know this is upsetting." I drag air into my lungs. The coin is hot now, slick with sweat. I feel the grooves under my thumb, the old engraving worn down by my mother's thumb before mine. "I'm not trying to hurt myself," I say, forcing each word to land. "I'm trying to protect what she left me. There are bank transfers in his name that..." "She sees patterns that aren't there," my uncle tells the doctor. "It's like she's living in a different reality. Everything is a conspiracy. Conspiracy goes into the chart too. I can almost hear the letters slotting into place, one by one." The door lock clicks when someone walks past in the hall, a sharp metal sound swallowed by the hum of the lights. I notice the panic button by the nurse's elbow, the form on the desk with little boxes. Voluntary, involuntary, danger to self, danger to others. "I'm concerned that you might be under a lot of stress that's affecting how you perceive things." Dr. Han says, choosing each phrase like it could be used in court. We can admit you for a short observational hold, just a couple of days, to keep you safe, help you stabilize, get some rest. I don't need to be locked up to sleep, I say. I need someone to look at the numbers. My uncle exhales like he's been holding his breath for years. This is what I mean, he says, turning to the doctor, ignoring me. She can't prioritize her own safety. Everything comes back to this money. It's all she talks about. She's obsessed. The nurse lowers a form onto the clipboard and pushes it toward him. Next of kin signature here, please, she says. Why does he sign? I ask. My voice jumps higher than I want it to. I'm right here. I can hear you. I can make my own decisions. Given the current presentation and the level of concern, Dr. Han says, we're going to proceed with a brief hold under medical recommendation. You'll have rights explained to you in full. This is about getting you the help you need. My uncle's pen touches paper. Ink flows in a smooth practice line. It's the same hand that signed over my mother's medical decisions when she was too tired to argue. The same hand that signed checks I never saw. The coin digs into my skin as he writes my future like it's just another transaction. I look at the nurse. Can you write this down? I ask. That I do not consent. That I'm saying on record I believe my uncle has a financial conflict of interest. That I am asking for an independent review of the estate. She hesitates. Then she nods once, pen hovering, and adds a line I can't read from here. Something, at least, exists outside his story now. A broad-shouldered orderly appears at the doorway, scrubs a shade darker than the nurse's, badge clipped to his pocket. Ready? He asks gently. My uncle steps back, smoothing his tie like this is a meeting he's just nailed. You're doing the right thing, he tells me, voice low, almost paternal. You'll thank me for this later. I slide off the bed. The floor is cold through the thin hospital socks. The ID bracelet scratches against my skin when I adjust the hem of the loaner gown. The coin is hidden safely in my fist, tucked against my lifeline. The orderly walks beside me as we move down the hallway. Doors line the corridor, each one with a small reinforced window, each one holding somebody else's version of this story. The smell of bleach thickens. A monitor beeps steadily from a room we pass, like a metronome counting out other people's crises. We stop at a heavy door with a keypad and a magnetic lock. Behind it, I hear a distant TV, a laugh, a shout, something metal rolling across tile. My uncle's voice floats after us from the intake room, muffled but clear enough to catch. She's in good hands, he tells someone. They'll see what I see. The orderly punches in a code. The magnet releases with a dull thunk. He pushes the door open, and as I step through into the locked unit, the weight of it swings back. The seal clacks home behind my shoulder with a sound that feels exactly like a verdict. The sound drags another door over it in my mind. A door that opens on burnt coffee and Lysol instead of disinfectant and beeping monitors. It's still the same day, just a different kind of trap. This morning I stand on my aunt's porch, the brass coin smooth and familiar in my pocket, the winter air sharp in my nose. She texted, "Brunch? Need to talk about the house." I told myself it meant progress, clarity, maybe even a check with my name spelled right. I ring the bell. Behind the door I hear chairs scrape. A quick hush like someone turning down a TV. The deadbolt clicks, metal on metal, and my aunt opens the door with a smile a half second too late. "There she is," she says, stepping aside. "Come in, honey." The smell hits me first. Burnt coffee, the dark, bitter edge of it, laid over the sharp, fake citrus of Lysol. The combination makes my stomach flutter, like I've walked into a waiting room instead of a family dining room. The table confirms it. The plates are pushed off to the side, empty except for crumbs and a few streaks of egg. In their place are neat stacks of glossy pamphlets, pale blue and white, with titles like Understanding Early Psychosis and When Worry Becomes Concern. My uncle sits at the head of the table, fingers laced, a ceramic mug in front of him that he's not drinking from. My cousin occupies the chair to his right, eyes on her phone until she hears my footsteps and guiltily flips it face down. My grandmother is here too, hands clasped, knuckles pale, rosary beads peeking out from under her sleeve. The coin rolls between my fingers under the table as I slide into the empty chair. The metal is cool, anchoring, the ridges a private Morse code. My mother's voice is there in the warmth starting to build along its edge. "This looks intense for pancakes," I say, forcing a laugh. "It's not an ambush," my uncle says, which is exactly what you say when it is. "We're just worried." My aunt pushes a pamphlet toward me like an appetizer. Just read it, she says. We thought it might help explain some of what's been going on. Some of what's been going on is that my mother died, and I found holes in her accounts big enough to drive a hearse through. Some of what's been going on is that every time I ask my uncle for documentation, he sends tone instead of numbers. I pick up the pamphlet. The paper is slick. A stock photo of a thoughtful woman stares at the horizon, hands around a mug. She looks nothing like me. I'm okay, I say. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm not. You're not okay, my uncle says gently, cutting me off like he did at intake. And that's understandable, but it's affecting your thinking. He pulls a folder from the chair beside him and lays it on the table with a soft thump. The sound is small but decisive, like a gavel resting. I've printed some of your emails, he says, so we can look at this together. My stomach drops. He opens the folder. Pages spill out, my own words in black and white, but not all of them. Chunks highlighted, paragraphs taken out of order, whole threads missing. My grandmother shifts in her chair. Mark, she murmurs, but he raises a hand. This is from 2 weeks ago, he says, tapping a page. You wrote, "You're killing Mom all over again, stealing everything she left me." I wrote that after you refused to show me the closing statement on the house, I say. You still haven't. He nods slowly, like I've made his point for him. You see how extreme that sounds? He asks the room, not me. She jumps straight to accusations. It's black and white, all or nothing. My cousin stares at her hands. My aunt busies herself with stacking unused plates. I listed the withdrawals, I say. I included dates. I was specific. It's not black and white, it's math. I reach for one of the other pages. He slides his hand over it just for a second, just enough to show it still belongs to him. You've been sending messages at all hours, he continues. 2, 3, 4 in the morning, long rambling, accusing everyone of lying. That's not healthy grief. That's obsession. Because you never answer during the day, I snap. Because that's when you're in meetings. I work, remember? I audit spreadsheets for a living. I know what numbers are supposed to look like when they're clean. The word audit lands differently than I intend. My aunt looks up, startled, like I've introduced a foreign language. You hear that? My uncle says softly. Everything is a case. Everything is an investigation. She can't let it go long enough to rest. He flips to another page, another email, one where I wrote that I felt like I was losing my mind trying to track everything by myself. Right here, he says, pointing. She says it herself. I said I felt like I was losing my mind, I say, because I kept finding new charges no one could explain. He smiles sadly, like he's at the bedside of a patient who insists their leg isn't broken. My grandmother clears her throat. Sweetheart, she says to me, we don't want to see you go the way your mama did. She was always fragile. My fingers tighten around the coin until the metal edge stings. My mother was tired, not fragile. Tired from holding too much and being believed too little. She worked 2 jobs and took care of you, I say, voice shaking. That's not fragile. My uncle exhales through his nose, the sound soft but heavy. No one is attacking your mother, he says. We're talking about patterns. We just want you to consider that maybe your brain is playing tricks on you right now, that maybe these financial concerns are part of a larger picture. He phrases it like a diagnosis he's already read somewhere. I want you to consider showing me the statements like you promised, I say. And the original will you said you couldn't find. My aunt looks at him then, quick and sharp, just for a second. He ignores her. Do you hear how she keeps looping back? He asks. This is what our calls are like. Over and over, the same accusations, the same numbers she thinks are missing. It's not rational. I wrote them down, I say, heat hitting my throat, my cheeks. There were 3 withdrawals, all over $5,000 from the joint account, after Mom was too sick to sign anything. That's not a feeling, that's a fact. At this point, he says, folding his hands, I honestly don't believe she remembers events accurately. She's rewriting history to fit this idea that I'm the villain. The irony is so sharp I almost choke on it. That's enough, I say, pushing my chair back. The legs scrape the floor, a harsh screech that makes my grandmother flinch. I'm not doing this. You want to talk about numbers, we can talk about numbers. But I'm not sitting here while you wave pamphlets in my face and call it brunch. I stand up. The coin slides in my palm, hot now, its weight the only thing that feels like mine. My uncle stands too, hands raised, palms open. No one is forcing you, he says. We're offering help. We're just asking you to get evaluated. A quick check at the hospital, to put everyone's mind at ease. A quick check, like my mind is a tire that can be kicked. I don't need a hospital, I say. I need a forensic accountant. My cousin winces. My aunt says my name, a warning in it. My uncle's gaze hardens just a fraction before he smooths it over. He glances at the clock on the microwave, then at his phone. Okay, he says slowly. If you won't go voluntarily, we may have to involve someone else, for your safety. The doorbell rings. The sound slices clean through the room. My aunt's eyes flick to my uncle. He nods, barely. I called for a welfare check, he says, not apologetic at all. I had to. I couldn't live with myself if something happened and we did nothing. My heart thuds against my ribs, each beat a fist. I hear boots on the porch, the murmur of voices, the crackle of a radio. The coin is a live thing in my hand, pulsing with my pulse. My aunt goes to the door, opens it. 2 paramedics stand there in dark uniforms, reflective stripes catching the light, medical bags slung over their shoulders. One of them glances down at a tablet, then up at me over my aunt's shoulder. Hi, he says, voice professional, already in a registered tone. We got a call about a possible psychosis. Patient refusing help. Possible psychosis. Refusing help. They haven't said my name yet, but I can hear it sitting in their report, waiting to be filled in. Mind if we come in? The taller paramedic asks, even though his boots are already on the threshold. My uncle answers for me. Please, he says, we're very worried. They do a quick scene scan, the way they're trained to. Eyes moving, noting exits, bodies, potential weapons, the feel of the room. One of them clocks the pamphlets on the table, the way my aunt hovers, my grandmother's hands shaking around her rosary. It all builds a story before I add a single word. Can you tell me your name? The other one asks, tablet in hand, thumb ready over a digital checklist. I do. My voice is steady. The coin presses into my palm in my pocket, a small, solid truth. They ask date, location, who the president is. I answer each one. No hesitation. The taller one nods, taps his screen. And what's going on today? He asks. I open my mouth to say, my uncle is draining my inheritance and trying to have my sanity notarized to match. What comes out is, we're having a disagreement about my mother's estate. My uncle sighs. He's going to hear a very different version from her, he tells the paramedic quietly, as if I can't hear him. She thinks I'm stealing. She sent 30 emails last night alone, all caps, saying I'm a murderer. That is not what happened, I say, heat flaring in my face. I documented transfers from her account. I asked for proof. He's refusing. That's not a delusion, that's a paper trail. The paramedic's gaze flicks from me to my uncle and back, like a metronome. He doesn't see bank statements, signatures, a heart attack on a death certificate. He sees a woman with flushed cheeks, raised voice, and relatives nodding in anxious unison. He taps something into the tablet. Possible psychosis stays on the screen. Refusing help gets a little green check mark. The memory freezes there mid-breath. Now those same words live in my chart as justification for the hold. On the Psych unit, the doors don't look like doors until they close. They're painted the same dull beige as the walls, edges softened by years of cleaning. You only know they're locked when you hear the magnet catch, a low final thunk that you feel in your teeth. The chairs in the day room are plastic and bolted to the floor, arranged in a loose circle no one quite completes. A TV murmurs in the corner, captions running under a daytime talk show no one is watching. Somewhere down the hall a printer spits out labels every few minutes, the little whine and snap of it like a metronome for the ward's heartbeat. Underneath it all, someone is crying behind a closed door, a thin looping sound. At admission, they take everything that could double as string, metal, glass, privacy, shoes, belt, phone, purse. The nurse goes through each item with gloved hands, calling them out in a bored voice, while another nurse checks them off on a form. Black sneakers, 1 pair, cell phone placed in secure locker, wallet, contents verified. The brass coin is the only thing they don't find. I palmed it when they asked for my jewelry, slid it into my sock with a practiced curl of my toes. It sits now against my ankle bone, a small cold crescent that makes the floor feel less like it belongs to them. They give me a plastic bin with a number printed on the side, not my name. My clothes go into it. I get a thin gown that smells like industrial detergent and a rough towel that sheds lint. When they bring me to the interview room, my uncle is already there. Of course he is. He sits closer to the doctor than I do, his chair angled toward her, posture relaxed but alert. He has the folder with my emails again, a physical prop on his lap. His tie is still straight. The psychiatrist for the unit introduces herself. Different from Dr. Han at intake, but the same professional distance in her eyes, a tablet in her hands, stylus poised. "I'd like to hear from both of you," she says. "But mostly from you," she adds to me, like that's reassurance. My uncle smiles, wounded and patient. "Of course," he says, "I'm just here to support." She starts with the basics again, but this time, everything counts double. "How long have you had trouble sleeping? How long have you been feeling on edge? Any history of mental illness in the family?" On my mother's side, my uncle jumps in. "She struggled, never got help. We tried. Now I see the same patterns in her daughter." The doctor's stylus moves. I imagine the words sliding into place. Family history, positive. I talk about stress, about losing my mother, about handling paperwork alone. "Can you tell me more about these concerns about money?" she asks. "Yes," I say, and I do. I list amounts, dates, the day I logged in and found the joint account nearly empty. I describe signatures that don't look like my mother's, power of attorney papers that appeared suddenly when she was too tired to argue. The doctor's stylus pauses at forged-looking signatures. Then it moves again. Not in a box labeled financial abuse. In a box labeled something else. "You believe your uncle is stealing from you," she says. It is not a question, not really. "I believe the numbers don't make sense," I say carefully. "I believe there is money missing that no one will account for. I asked for proof and I got this." I nod at the folder on his lap. "She sees patterns where there aren't any," he says. "We've explained the transfers. She won't accept it. She thinks everyone is lying to her. That's why we're here." His voice cracks a little on here. He dabs at the corner of his eye with a folded napkin. The napkin is too clean, like it was placed there in advance. The doctor looks at him with brief sympathy, then at me. "Do you feel people are out to get you?" she asks. It is an impossible question. There is no safe yes, no honest no. "I feel like my uncle is not being transparent," I say. "I feel like no one listens when I point to actual evidence." She nods. "Do you believe your family is conspiring against you?" The word conspiring turns the air thick. "I believe my uncle is telling a story about me I didn't write," I say. "I believe everyone else is hearing it more than they're hearing me." My uncle sighs, deep and theatrical. "You see," he murmurs, "everything is a plot. Everything is twisted. Humiliation burns under my skin. Every answer is a trap. Say nothing and I'm flat, depressed. Say too much and I'm paranoid. Try to be precise and I'm intellectualizing." The coin presses against my ankle, reminding me that there is a world outside this room where numbers live on paper, black and white. Here, everything that matters is ink I cannot see. They ask about the bridge incident 2 years ago. My uncle recounts his version with clinical detail. "Drove to the overpass, called me hysterical, said she didn't want to be here anymore. I had to talk her down. I pulled over in a panic attack," I say. "I called for help. That's not the same as trying to jump." The doctor glances at the tablet, where some old ER note has already chosen a side. She reviews out loud what she calls risk factors and protective factors. Under risk, she lists recent bereavement, escalating conflict, possible psychosis, poor insight into condition. Poor insight is new, my uncle's contribution. Under protective factors, she notes employment, housing, some insight, some, like a courtesy tip. "I'm concerned about your safety," she says finally. "I'm also concerned about the level of conflict at home. Given the information we have, I'm going to recommend a 72-hour hold for stabilization and observation." The room shrinks. That number is a wall. "That's 3 days," I say. 3 days where he has full control of everything on the outside, while you write me down as unstable. How is that keeping me safe? The doctor's stylus moves. Agitated response. Oppositional. "This isn't punitive," she says. "This is about care. You'll have a chance to rest, to meet with the team, to explore medication options if appropriate. We can revisit the situation after that." "I don't consent," I say. "My uncle benefits from me being here. That is a conflict of interest. Please write that down exactly. The patient advocate is not in this room yet. Just me, him, her. I'll note your disagreement," she says, "and your perception of the situation." Perception, another soft word that cuts deep. Outside in the hallway, I hear the buzz of the doors, a cart rolling by, a nurse calling out a name for meds. The printer at the nurse's station starts up again, spitting another label, another identity boiled down to last name, first initial, medical record number. The doctor stands. "I'll put the order in now," she says. "The team will check on you regularly." My uncle leans forward as if to touch my shoulder, thinks better of it with the doctor watching, and lets his hand fall. "This is for your own good," he says softly. The nurse appears with a new bracelet, this one tighter. She reads from a little laminated rights sheet about involuntary status, due process, petition for review. Her voice is flat, practiced. I only catch every other word. The band snaps into place around my wrist, plastic digging into skin. It is printed with the same barcode as before, but now somewhere in the system there is a box checked beside my name that says, "Hold 72 hours, poor insight, lack of cooperation." I look at the thin white strip, at the numbers that now speak louder than anything I say, and realize that from this moment on, every word out of my mouth will be weighed against a story I did not get to tell. On the unit, everything runs on routines someone else wrote. In the morning, there's Medline. We queue up along the hallway, socks whispering on the waxed floor, hospital gowns and borrowed sweatpants forming a soft, shuffling parade. At the end of the line is a metal cart with drawers, a laptop, and a nurse in purple scrubs. She takes my wrist without really asking. The bracelet's barcode passes under the scanner with a small electronic beep, a sound that reminds me of checkout lanes and inventory control. Another system making sure every pill is accounted for and every person is not. "Open, please," she says. She tips a tiny paper cup into my palm. 2 tablets pale against my skin. I roll them with my thumb. Under my heel, hidden in my sock, the brass coin digs into bone. A secret weight. "Swallow while I watch," she adds, handing me a cup of water. I do. The tablets scrape my tongue chalky. The water is lukewarm. She checks a box on the screen. Compliance. Behind me, a man hums under his breath, the same wandering tune he's been humming since I got here. He wears a hoodie with the strings removed, hands twitching in the pocket opening as if searching for something that's not allowed. The day room has windows that don't open and chairs that don't move. Bolted plastic, rounded edges, a TV bolted high in the corner, playing a game show in which people win money I can't count. On the far side, near the window, a girl about my age sits with her forehead pressed to the glass, humming in tune now, tracing shapes only she can see. An older woman knits carefully in a corner, metal needles traded for thick plastic ones. The yarn is hospital issue beige, but her hands move with the precision of someone who has made warmth out of worse. A younger guy paces a strip of floor in even lengths, counting the tiles out loud. 8, 9, 10, turn, 8, 9, 10, turn. He nods at me when our eyes meet, like we're co-workers on the same long shift. There are labels taped to our doors, to our charts, to the whiteboard by the nurse's station. MDD, BPAD, Psych NOS. My name, written in dry erase marker, sits next to a room number and the word OBS. Observation, 72 hours. None of those boxes mention that the girl by the window smells faintly of orange shampoo, or that the pacing guy has a tiny tattoo of a treble clef on his ankle, half hidden by hospital socks. They don't say that the knitter's hands tremble just a little more when the overhead speaker crackles. The schedule for the day is written in colored markers next to our names. Goals group in the morning, coping skills, art therapy. I stare at it like it's written in another language. "You don't have to go to everything," a tech says, standing at my elbow with a clipboard. "Just what you feel up for." What I feel up for is waking up from this. What I settle for is sitting in the day room and pretending this is a very strange hotel lobby. The coin becomes my check-in. When my thoughts start to slide, I press the edge into my thumb. In Medline, against my ankle bone. In the day room, hidden in my fist. At night, under the thin foam pillow, so close I can feel its cold circle through the case. I tell myself, I remember numbers, I remember signatures. I remember my mother's real handwriting and the way her hand shook at the end. Whatever this place calls delusion, I call data. On the second day, a nurse with tired kind eyes and a badge reel shaped like a cartoon heart comes to take my vitals. We sit in a small alcove near the nurse's station, the blood pressure cuff biting my arm, the monitor hissing and then beeping softly as it deflates. "Your uncle's been calling every few hours," she says, just making conversation. Her tone says she's not impressed. Very insistent. My chest tightens under the cuff. "He's calling here?" I ask. She shrugs, notes my blood pressure on a sticky note. "One of the main contacts on your file," she says, "keeps asking for updates, asking what meds you're on, whether we're planning to start something stronger." I taste metal. It's not the coin. "Have I even seen my psychiatrist again?" I ask. "Not yet," she says. "Probably tomorrow for rounds." She glances toward the desk. Honestly, I had to tell him we don't discuss med changes over the phone without the attending. But he pushes, says he just wants you calm, wants you to stop obsessing. Those were his words. Obsessing. The same word from brunch, from intake, now echoing over the hospital landline. Every repetition polishing it into something that sounds clinical instead of convenient. Does that happen a lot, I ask? Family calling like that? She gives me a look that says more than her words. Sometimes, she says, usually when they're more interested in quiet than in care. She tucks the sticky note onto a clipboard that has a grid drawn on it. Names down the side, times across the top. Little check marks where someone has been seen, meds given, behaviors noted. My eyes snag on a column labeled phone. A series of times are jotted next to my last name, each followed by U for uncle. 8:30, 10:15, noon. How many times is he allowed to call? I ask. As many as he wants, I guess, she says. But we don't always pick up the second or third time. The printer spits another label from the nurse's station, the buzz and snap of paper feeding out. Somewhere behind it, I hear the phone ring again. It's a flat institutional ring, but my body hears my uncle's voice under it. I ask for scratch paper that afternoon. For journaling, I say, because that sounds therapeutic instead of threatening. The tech at the desk digs in a drawer and produces 3 sheets of lined paper and a golf pencil with no eraser. Nothing with a spiral, she says in policy. I carry them back to the day room like there's something breakable. The coin rests in my palm on top of the paper for a second, its weight holding the edges down before I sit and tuck it back into my fist. I don't start with feelings. I start with a ledger. Date, time, name of staff, exact words. At 1300 hours, Uncle called, asked about med adjustments before attending, has seen me again. Nurse said, very insistent. At intake, Uncle signed consent forms while I sat in the room. I used the wall clock above the TV to anchor the times, counting the sweep of the red second hand when the printer whirs, when the phone rings, when someone says my uncle's name. I note when the tech shines a flashlight into my room on 15-minute checks, the tiny circle of light hitting the metal bed frame, the coin under my pillow a cold reassurance against my ear. The act of writing feels like building a chain of custody for my own mind. Every entry is a piece of evidence, initialed in the press of my hand. In the evening, a social worker I haven't met yet stops by my chair. She smells like stale coffee and the faintest trace of cigarettes. I'll be coordinating with your uncle about discharge planning, she says. He mentioned you agreed in the past that he should handle long-term decisions. He sounds very involved. I look down at my paper, then up at her. I never agreed to that, I say. My mother did when she was sick. That's not the same thing. She pauses, her pen hovers over her notebook. That's not how he framed it, she says slowly. I write that down too. The TV laughs canned laughter at a joke no one is listening to. Somewhere down the hall, the doors buzz as a keycard passes, and the lock releases with a soft metallic thunk. The printer starts up again, spitting out a fresh label with someone else's name and number. I press the coin into the paper until it leaves the faintest circle around the last line I've written, an invisible seal. And for the first time since they put the bracelet on, I feel like there is one version of reality here that doesn't belong to him. The smell of disinfectant drifts in from the hallway, sharp, lemony, threaded with something metallic that never quite washes out. It sits behind my teeth and pulls me backward. Suddenly, I'm not in the day room with bolt-down chairs and a humming TV. I'm at our old kitchen table, the wood worn smooth where my mother's elbows rested year after year. The overhead light flickers once, buzzing like it does here on the unit. She's rolling the same brass coin across her knuckles, the metal catching the light, clicking softly against bone. I watch it like a magic trick. Her fingers are thinner than they used to be, veins like blue lines under paper. If anything ever happens to me, she says, eyes still on the coin, you keep this. I laugh it off at first. You're being dramatic, I say. Nothing's going to happen. She closes her hand around the coin and then reaches for mine. Her palm is warm and a little damp, disinfectant and dish soap clinging to her skin. She presses the metal into my fist until the edges dig in. I'm serious, she says. Her voice isn't dramatic at all. It's flat in that way that means she's telling the truth she's been avoiding. This is for you to remember what's real, even if they tell you something else. Who's they, I ask. She hesitates. Her eyes flick toward the hallway where my uncle's voice is a distant murmur on the phone. He tells the story fast, she says softly, so you don't notice the holes. If there ever comes a day when it's his word against mine, you remember what you saw, what you heard, not just what he says. Back on the unit, the printer at the nurse's station spits out another label with a buzz and snap. A tech laughs at a joke I can't hear. My fingers tighten around the coin in my lap. History isn't a hallucination. It just doesn't come with a barcode. The disinfectant smell pulls me again, only now it's harsher, sharper. ER grade. Monitors beeping in different tempos, the squeak of a gurney wheel. I'm back in a hallway lined with curtains, fluorescent lights burning white holes in the ceiling. My mother lies on a narrow bed, hospital gown tied crookedly at the back. A blood pressure cuff squeezes her arm, hissing, letting go. The heart monitor next to her beeps steady, green lines spiking on the screen. "I'm fine," she says, breathless. "I told them I'm fine." "You had chest pain," I remind her. "You almost passed out in the grocery store." She shrugs one shoulder like that's an opinion, not an event. She smells like rubbing alcohol and that chemical soap they have in hospital bathrooms. My uncle stands at the foot of her bed, arms crossed, talking to the triage nurse. "She's under a lot of stress," he says. "She worries, she has anxiety." The nurse nods, typing. "She thinks every ache is a heart attack," he continues, half laughing like it's self-deprecating, like we're all in on the joke. "She's always been like this." My mother flinches at that just a little. He doesn't see it, or he pretends not to. Later, when the labs come back reassuring and they discharge her with a pamphlet on managing stress, he tells the family she overreacted. He says, "The doctor said it's just anxiety." They never said just. That's his word. Years blur together in little vignettes like that. My mother at the dining table, holding a bill with shaking hands. "I don't remember missing this payment," she says. My uncle leaning over her shoulder, taking the paper gently like he's helping. "It's fine," he says. "You must have forgotten. You've had a lot on your mind." At Christmas, my aunt corners me near the sink, the hum of the dishwasher masking our voices. "Your mom snapped at me on the phone last week," she says. "Mark says she's been unstable. Maybe you should convince her to let him handle more." The phone calls start routing through him after that. "We'll just have them call me," he tells my mother, already punching his number into the clipboard at the clinic. "You shouldn't have to deal with all this. I'll talk to the bank. I'll talk to the insurance. Rest." Rest becomes the excuse. He forgets to pass along messages. He tells me, "The doctor said nothing urgent," when I know my mother has been waiting on results. He says, "The bank agreed we're on track," when the numbers in the account whisper otherwise. He tells the story fast. Little edits, here and there, smoothing over anything that might snag. On the unit, I stare at the scuffed linoleum, the little crescent where someone dropped a chair leg too hard. The hum of the vents is the same pitch as the old kitchen fridge. My brain stitches sounds together into a timeline. I remember the last week before my mother's heart failed. She's at the same kitchen table, this time with 3 envelopes laid out in a precise row. Property tax, credit card, a notice from the bank with red letters she keeps flipping face down. "I don't understand how it got this bad," she says, voice thin. "I gave him everything. He said he was handling it. You could take it back," I say. The coin is under my palm again, warm from her hand. "You could change the paperwork, make me power of attorney instead." She laughs, but there is no humor in it. "Sweetheart, I'm tired," she says. "And your uncle. He doesn't let go once he's got his teeth into something. Last time someone tried to take anything from him, She stops herself. "What?" I press. She looks at the window like someone might be listening from the yard. "You were little," she says. "He had a bad time. Rage and breakdown, that's what my mother called it. Smashed a door, neighbors called the police. They took him in for a few days. Doctors, meds. We weren't supposed to talk about it after." She picks up the coin again, rubs the face of it with her thumb. "We all pretended it didn't happen," she murmurs, "because that was easier than admitting the golden boy could crack." She slides the coin back to me, closing my fingers around it. "If he ever starts telling you I'm crazy," she says, quiet and sharp, "remember this conversation. Remember who was sent away and who stayed to pay the bills." On the unit, my eyes sting. I blink hard, the overhead lights smearing for a second. The psychiatrist wrote paranoia about financial manipulation in my chart. As if my brain invented estate documents, closing dates, and missing balances because it was bored. But the pattern starts long before I ever ask for a bank statement. It starts with my mother's ER visits being filed under anxiety, with her unpaid bills being chalked up to forgetfulness instead of someone else's oversight, with a smashed door and a 3-day stay that vanished from family lore the second he walked out. What they call paranoia is just the first attempt to name a pattern everyone else agreed to ignore. The coin reminds me of that. Cool against my palm, warmer as my grip tightens. A knock at the dayroom doorway pulls me back. The social worker stands there with her notebook, hair clipped back, eyes faintly harried. We're setting up a family meeting, she says. Tomorrow afternoon, you, your uncle, the treatment team, to talk about next steps and aftercare. Next steps. Aftercare. Words that can mean leash if the wrong person is holding them. I feel the coin press into my lifeline, grounding me in both rooms at once. My mother at the kitchen table, my uncle in the air, me now on this plastic chair. For the first time, the line between those moments feels less like a blur and more like a straight shot. Good, I say, surprising myself with how steady it sounds. I'd like them all in the same room when we talk about history. The social worker nods, writing something down I can't see. Her pen scratches across the page, slow enough this time that I notice every stroke. It hits me that every line she puts on that paper will outlive whatever I say out loud. My uncle's been writing the story for years. If I keep talking and never writing, I'm always just a quote in his version. The coin in my palm is warm now, edges imprinted into my skin. I close my hand around it, feel the bite, and make a decision. If they're going to use systems and forms and boxes against me, I'm going to learn the rules and use them back. Later, the psychiatrist calls me into a small consult room. It's a box with 2 plastic chairs, a narrow desk, and a poster about depression curling at one corner. There's a white binder on the shelf labeled Patient Rights in block letters. I didn't notice it before. She sits, tablet on her knee, stylus ready. So, she says, how are you feeling today? I sit too. The coin presses into the meat of my thumb. I take a breath. I have some questions about my rights, I say. Her eyebrows lift just a little. Okay, she says slowly. What kind of questions? Involuntary hold, I say. What are my rights around second opinions, access to my records, and filing concerns about abuse? The word hangs there. Abuse. It sounds different than paranoia. Heavier. Less easy to wave away. She shifts in her chair. Well, you have the right to humane treatment, she says, almost reciting. The right to be informed of your diagnosis, the right to participate in treatment planning to the extent, and the right to a patient advocate, I cut in as politely as I can. There's a number by the phone on the wall. It says, for concerns, call the advocacy office. I'd like to talk to them, and I'd like that written in my chart. Her eyes flicker. She wasn't expecting me to read the posters. Yes, she says after a beat. We can arrange for an advocate to come speak with you. Thank you, I say. I keep my voice level. This is a medical setting, but there's also a legal aspect to what's happening with my mother's estate and my uncle's control over it. I want my concerns about financial abuse documented in my record, not just called paranoia. The stylist stops. She studies my face like she's looking for cracks. Financial abuse, she repeats. Yes, I say. My uncle had power of attorney for my mother. There are questionable transfers. He now stands to lose money if I'm deemed competent to challenge them. He is also the primary historian in my chart. That is a conflict of interest. I want that phrased exactly like that. Her jaw tightens a little, but she types. I hear each tap of the stylus on glass like distant footsteps. We can document your concerns, she says. We are not a court. We can't adjudicate financial disputes. I'm not asking you to, I say. I'm asking you to stop treating evidence as a symptom. Her gaze snaps up. For a second, something like respect flickers there. Or maybe just recognition that I am not going to cry and beg today. I look at the binder on the shelf. I'd also like to review my chart, I add. Or at least the parts that describe my history. I know I have that right. She hesitates. There are processes, she says. But yes, you can see parts of your record. We usually have patients sign a request. I'll ask the nurse to bring the form. The nurse appears a few minutes later with a clipboard. There's a form that says, Request for access to protected health information in type print. I sign. My bracelet clicks softly against the plastic as I write. An hour later, I'm in another little room with a desk and a stack of printed pages. A staff member sits nearby, more chaperone than guard, flipping through a magazine. The chart is thick for a stay this short. Each note stamped with date, time, and someone's initials. I scan for the words that matter. History of suicide attempt 2 years prior, one note says. I actually laugh. The staff member glances up. I tap the line with my finger. This was a panic attack, I say. Look at the ER note. No attempt, no plan, no intent. I drove myself there and asked for help. That's the opposite of a suicide attempt. I feel the coin against my ankle, solid and cold. Another line, refusal of medications. I count backward through my memories of tiny paper cups. I was never offered meds before this admission, I say. That should be no previous trials reported, not refusal. Refusal implies non-compliance with something that didn't exist. The staff member shrugs. You can bring it up with the doc, she says. I will, I say, and I want that noted too, that I dispute these entries. When I meet with the psychiatrist again, I come with a list. Dates, quotations, corrections. This says I threatened to drive off a bridge, I point out. I did not. There is no documentation from that ER visit that supports that. There is only my uncle's retelling. Please label it as collateral report from family, not fact. She nods, a little begrudgingly. I can add an addendum, she says, noting your perspective. Good, I say, and the phrase refusal of meds needs to be corrected. I can't refuse something that was never offered. That's misleading. She presses her lips together. Fine, she says. I'll adjust the language. Her stylus moves. Addendum, amendment. Small words that mean the record just cracked, even if only by one line. The next afternoon, the patient advocate arrives. She is shorter than I expected, with plain glasses and a lanyard full of keys and ID cards. Her badge says Morales, patient rights. We sit in a corner room with the door propped open. She puts a small digital recorder on the table but doesn't turn it on yet. My role is to represent your interests, she says. I don't work for your doctor or your family. I work for you. What's going on? The coin is in my hand this time, not my sock. I roll it between my fingers under the table, feeling the familiar ridges as I talk. I lay it out like a case. My uncle as both financial guardian and primary historian. His long pattern of minimizing my mother's health. His control over phone calls, rides, information. His current push for med adjustments before I've even had a second full eval. I slide my scratch paper across the table, the ledger of his calls, the exact phrases staff used. The way concern keeps showing up in the chart where interest might be more honest. She reads quietly. Her eyes move faster over some lines. They slow over others. Has anyone else in your family expressed concern about his control? She asks. My mother, I say. I describe the kitchen table, the bills, the story about his episodes when he was younger. The door smashed. The short stay, the family silence after. She leans back, lets out a breath through her nose. Okay, she says. So you're saying the person framing you as unstable has his own psychiatric history, and that history is not currently in this record, while his statements are. Yes, I say, and he stands to benefit financially from me being seen as unreliable. There's a small silence. The hum of the vent fills it. Down the hall, a monitor beeps steadily. This is more than a family squabble, she says. Her voice has changed. Less soothing, more precise. There are potential exploitation issues here, and possible misuse of the mental health system to resolve a financial dispute. She picks up her own pen now, starts a list. Risk manager, ethics consult, flag chart for staff, conflict of interest. We have procedures for this, she says. Mandatory reporting when abuse is suspected, especially with vulnerable adults. Your mother's situation may be closed, but yours is current. I can request that the hospital's risk management office review the role your uncle is playing in your care. Will that change the fact that I'm on a hold? I ask. Not immediately, she says honestly, but it changes how seriously your concerns are taken, and it means your uncle isn't the only one whose behavior is under a microscope. The coin warms in my palm, heat seeping slow and steady into my skin. She slides my scratch paper back toward me. Keep writing, she says. Dates, times, names, you're doing half my job already. Then she taps the table between us. And I'll do the part where I speak their language in their meetings. Outside the door, the intercom crackles and calls a code for another floor. Staff shoes squeak on tile as they move. Somewhere, the phone at the nurse's station starts ringing again. That flat institutional trill that probably has my uncle's voice on the other end. The advocate stands, tucks her notebook under her arm, and looks down at me. I'll talk to the risk manager today, she says, and I'll be in the family meeting tomorrow. You're not going to be the only one in that room pointing out the holes in his story. Visiting hours start with a clipboard. A tech wheels it down the hall, calling out last names. Our names become lines to be checked, boxes to be ticked, one more kind of roll call. When she says mine, my heart jumps, stupid and hopeful. In the family room, she says, you've got a visitor. The coin is in my fist before I even stand up. I press my thumb into the metal until it hurts, like I'm signing something in skin. The family room is halfway between hotel and waiting room. Plastic plants in corners, motivational posters about resilience, a table with rounded edges, 4 chairs, the door propped open just enough for a staff member at the desk outside to see in. I sit facing the doorway, that old auditor habit of watching who comes and goes. The air smells like stale coffee and that powdered lemon cleaner they use on everything. Then I see them. My friend steps through the doorway wrapped in a coat that still carries the chill from outside. Cold air follows them in, a thin ribbon against my face. There's a faint smell of copier toner and paper dust clinging to them, the scent of their office. They're hugging a manila envelope to their chest, like it's something alive. "Hey," they say, voice low but bright with relief. The tech at the door does the quick contraband scan with her eyes, no bags, no phone, no laptop, and nods them to the chair opposite me. "Hi," I say. The word cracks more than I want it to. We sit. The envelope makes a soft thump on the table. It sounds louder than any greeting. "They said no devices," my friend whispers, so I did it the old-fashioned way. They slide the envelope toward me. My fingers brush the rough paper, the flap secured with 2 pieces of tape and a red string. Warnings about staples and paper clips echo in my head from the unit rules. "Can I open it?" I ask the tech. She leans in, checks. "As long as there's no metal or bindings," she says. "Just paper." I peel back the flap. The smell of ink and toner wafts up, layered over the hospital cleaner. The coin in my palm goes cool as I touch the first sheet. It's a printout of a court docket. Black text on white paper, my uncle's name in all caps near the top. Date, case number, the words emergency psychiatric admission from 20-some years ago. My stomach drops and steadies at the same time. I've heard the story as a family rumor. Seeing it in type makes it heavier than anything in my chart. "There's more," my friend says. They fan out other pages, handwritten notes in the margins, highlighter streaks, arrows connecting dates like constellations. A copy of a restraining order from an ex. The language is careful but clear. Unpredictable rages, intimidation, gaslighting, fear for personal safety. My uncle's name is there again, spelled exactly the way it is on the consent forms he signed for me. Another set of documents shows the petition he filed for power of attorney over my mother's finances. The date stamp is only a few weeks before her first big health crash. "You got all this?" "How?" I ask, throat tight. "Public records," they say, "and a friend who owes me a favor at the courthouse, and some very strong coffee." They tap another sheet, this one full of numbers. "My day job is spreadsheets, remember?" they add. "I ran through your mom's accounts like an audit. There are transfers from her estate into an LLC with your uncle's name on it. Same address as his consulting business." They've circled amounts, drawn arrows between dates. One column lists estate account out, another lists LLC in. The dates line up a little too cleanly with the span between my mother's decline and her death. I trace one arrow with my fingertip. $10,000, moved 3 days after a cardiologist visit, where the doctor wrote patient advised not to make major decisions alone. I pulled the business filings too, my friend says. The LLC was created 2 months before your mom signed the power of attorney. It wasn't dormant, it was waiting. I sit back. The chair creaks softly. The coin in my hand presses into my lifeline. That old circle of metal grounding me while newer circles of ink circle his name. "I need the advocate to see this," I say, "and the doctor, and whoever the risk manager is." The tech at the door clears her throat. "Remember, no legal advice in here," she says lightly. "Just visiting." "We're just talking," my friend says. But their eyes flick to the advocate, who happens to be walking past the doorway with a folder in her arms. "Ms. Morales," I call. She stops, steps back, and peers in. "Is this a good time?" she asks the tech. 5 minutes, the tech says. She doesn't sound thrilled, but she doesn't say no. The advocate comes in and takes the third chair. Her badge catches the fluorescent light as she sits, flipping open her own notebook. "This is my friend," I say. "They brought some records about my uncle." My friend slides the top page across the table, keeping their movement slow and visible, like a clean handoff in an evidence room, manila to wood to advocate. Morales reads. Her face doesn't change much, but her spine does. She sits up straighter. "This is from a state database?" she asks. "County court website," my friend says. "Docket search." I wrote down the URLs and case numbers there, since I can't bring a phone. She nods, moves to the next page, restraining order. Her finger underlines the words emotional manipulation as she reads. Then the business records, the LLC, the transfer pattern my friend mapped out. Income to one account, almost immediate transfers out. Dates highlighted every time they line up with a major medical visit or hospitalization for my mother. "You did all this since she got admitted?" Morales asks, glancing at my friend. "Some of it before," they say. "She asked me months ago to keep an eye on things. I didn't have the whole picture until your hospital called me as her emergency contact. My friend looks at me, eyes bright with something between anger and loyalty. I figured if everyone's going to act like she's making up stories, somebody should check the ones he's telling. The advocate exhales slowly. This is not nothing, she says quietly. Past psychiatric admission, history of aggression, financial entanglements with a now-deceased relative who he represented here as unstable. And now he's the main historian while she's on a hold. She flips to a clean page in her notebook and starts writing names, case numbers, amounts. Her pen moves faster now, not slow. We have a responsibility to act when we suspect exploitation, she says, especially if the person raising the alarm is under our care. Does that mean you'll... I pause. The word investigate feels too dramatic and not enough at the same time. Bring it to risk management, she finishes for me. Yes, and likely to our legal counsel. They'll verify these documents through official channels. If they line up, we'll have to consider how his involvement impacts your treatment plan. The tech at the door glances at the clock, taps her watch. 2 minutes, she says. My friend squeezes my hand quickly, the coin pressed between our skin for a second before I tuck it back into my palm. I can get more if you need it, they say to Morales. Bank statements, closing documents, anything she already has copies of at home. Don't go beyond public records and what she's legally entitled to, Morales warns. But yes, if you have additional documentation that supports undue influence or misuse of funds, that's relevant. Bring it to me, not to him. She gathers the copied pages into a neat stack, aligning the corners with careful taps. The manila envelope looks thinner now that its contents have been divided, some back to my friend for safekeeping, some staying here, about to enter a different kind of file. This stays with us, she says, sliding her stack into her folder. I'll scan it into a confidential section and flag it for the attending and risk manager. It won't be lying around at the nurse's station. The idea of his name sitting in a system he doesn't control sends a strange calm through me. Like a tiny seesaw somewhere has finally shifted one notch toward level. Family meeting is tomorrow, right? Morales adds. I nod. Good, she says, because before we sit down with him, I want our people to have read his story in their language. The tech steps into the doorway. Time, she says. My friend stands, gives me one more look that says, I believe you louder than any diagnosis ever could, and lets the tech escort them out. Cold air and copier toner linger in the room after they're gone. The advocate closes her folder with a soft click. That was important, she says. Today his file walked in, not just yours. She stands, nods once, and steps back into the hallway. Outside, the phone at the nurse's station starts ringing again, that same flat trill that probably has his voice at the other end, still trying to direct the story. For the first time, though, I know that somewhere in this building, when they pull up a record with our last name on it, they won't just be looking at me. The next afternoon, a tech appears in the day room with a clipboard, and that tone that means I don't get to say no. Treatment team conference, she says, and let's go. I stand. The bracelet scratches my wrist when I move. The coin is warm in my fist, edge pressed into my palm like a promise. We walk down a hallway I haven't been down yet. The doors here are different, solid wood instead of painted metal, little plaques next to them that say things like Conference Room A and Education Center. It smells less like bleach, more like coffee and toner and something faintly floral from someone's hand lotion. She ushers me into a room with a long table and too many chairs. There's a carafe of water in the center, a stack of paper cups, a box of tissues no one is touching yet. A round wall clock ticks above a whiteboard. The attending psychiatrist sits near the middle, tablet open. The social worker is beside her, legal pad ready. Morales, the advocate, has her notebook and the same calm, sharp eyes. A man in a blazer with a badge clipped to his pocket is introduced as the risk manager. Next to him, a woman in a navy suit with a slim folder and a poker face. Our legal liaison. They're all already there when I walk in. For once, I'm not the last one added to the story. Have a seat, the psychiatrist says, gesturing to a chair halfway down the table. I sit where she points, close enough to see everyone's hands, far enough to see the door. The coin rests against my thigh, hidden in the fold of my gown, heat seeping through the thin fabric. A few seconds later, the door opens again. My uncle steps in. He's in the same blazer from brunch, but the lines around his mouth are deeper. He carries his folder like a shield, tucked under his arm, thumb pressing into the cardboard. His face is set in that expression he saves for weddings and funerals, somber, noble, long-suffering. Thank you all for making time, he says before anyone else can speak. that aggrieved heroism already in his tone. He takes the chair at the far end of the table, opposite the attending. It places him directly across from me. He doesn't look at me right away. He looks at them. The psychiatrist clears her throat. As we discussed, this is a treatment team conference, she says. We're here to talk about care, safety, and discharge planning. We want to hear from both of you. Of course, he says. I'm just grateful someone's taking this seriously. He opens his folder with a soft flick. I see the edges of my emails, the pamphlets he loves so much. He starts his monologue the way he practiced at my aunt's table. My niece has always been intense, he says. High-achieving, very bright, but prone to getting stuck on things. After my sister passed, that intensity turned into something else. Fixation. She began to accuse me of theft, of murder really. She said I was killing her mother with stress. He looks down, shakes his head, lets a bead of silence hang. He knows how silence works in a room like this. He fills it with implication. She's losing touch with reality, he continues. She sends dozens of emails a night, all about imaginary theft, conspiracies about an estate that barely covers her needs. She hasn't been eating, hasn't been sleeping. She's obsessed. That's not grief. That's illness. The social worker's pen moves. The risk manager watches, arms folded loosely. The legal liaison's expression doesn't change at all. I've tried everything, my uncle says. Gentle conversations, offers to help her manage the money responsibly. She refuses. She insists I'm the enemy. I don't know what else to do except ensure she gets the longer-term care she clearly needs. He glances at me then, just for a second, as if to prove he remembers I'm in the room. I'm prepared to continue acting as guardian, he adds, financially and otherwise. To be the one who says no when she wants to squander what's left. Someone has to keep things from spinning out. Everyone in this family has always relied on me for that. It's the brunch speech again, but polished, smoothed out. He's less theatrical here, more professional, like he's giving a presentation to a board. The psychiatrist lets him talk. She nods at intervals, makes small encouraging sounds. She doesn't interrupt. When he finally pauses, throat dry, hand drifting toward the water but not taking it yet, she looks around the table. Thank you, she says. I appreciate your perspective. We do want to understand the family context. Then she shifts. I see it in her shoulders, the way she straightens the tablet, the way Morales leans forward by half an inch. I also want to ask you some specific questions, the psychiatrist says, about your relationship with your sister and about some information that's come to our attention regarding your own history. My uncle blinks. My own history, he repeats, laughing lightly like she's made a cute mistake. I'm not the patient here. The legal liaison opens her slim folder. She doesn't push it into the center of the table. She just lays it flat in front of her, fingertips resting on the edge. Our concern is about potential conflicts of interest affecting care, she says calmly. That includes the background of anyone acting as a primary historian or in a fiduciary role. Risk manager time. He clears his throat. We've reviewed some public records, he says. Can you confirm that in 1998, you were admitted for an emergency psychiatric evaluation following a domestic disturbance? The air in the room changes. It's subtle. The vents still hum, the clock still ticks. But something in my uncle's posture jerks. A tiny misstep in his choreography. He starts, then recovers. That was decades ago. A one-time stress reaction. Completely irrelevant. Morales writes something down. I watch her hand, not his. Case docket shows a 3-day hospitalization, the risk manager continues. Noted for agitation, property damage, verbal threats. Does that sound accurate? My uncle's fingers tighten on his folder. The edges crumple under his grip. I was under enormous pressure, he says faster now. It was a misunderstanding. No one was hurt. My ex exaggerated to get leverage. The doctors overreacted. I've been stable ever since. The psychiatrist doesn't argue. She just tilts her head slightly. And your ex's restraining order a few years later, she asks? The one that describes unpredictable rages and gaslighting behavior? A muscle jumps in his jaw. He looks for the first time since I've known him, like he doesn't know which line comes next. That was dismissed, he snaps. People say all kinds of things when they're angry. We're not here to dig up ancient history. We're here because my niece is unsafe and needs help. She is under our care, the psychiatrist says, and we are obligated to consider whether her report of financial abuse may have merit, especially given what we now know about your history and your control over her and her mother's finances. He laughs again, but there's no charm in it now. It's sharp and too loud in the small room. Her report, he says, the word dripping. She's telling wild stories. You know that. You've seen it. She thinks I orchestrated her mother's death with paperwork. I think you obtained power of attorney weeks before her health declined, I say quietly. My voice surprises even me. It's not shaking. Every head turns to me. The coin burns like a live coal in my palm. And I think there are transfers into your LLC that match her hospital visits, I add. Morales has the documents. You've all seen them. The risk manager nods once, confirming. We're not making determinations about criminal behavior, the legal liaison says. However, the pattern of financial decisions and your dual role as guardian and historian is concerning. My uncle's calm starts to fray. He leans forward, palms on the table, voice rising. You people have no idea what I've done for this family, he says. If it weren't for me, my sister would have lost the house years before she got sick. I kept the lights on. I dealt with the bills. I took all the crazy off everyone else's shoulders. I'm the only one who has ever kept things from falling apart. The word crazy slams into the center of the table and sits there, ugly and heavy. Everyone comes to me, he goes on, louder now. When they can't handle her moods, her accusations, her drama, I have been containing this for years. And now you stand there and throw my past in my face like I'm some kind of danger? I'm the one who keeps the craziness contained. His hand strikes the table uncontained. A dull thud that makes the water ripple in the carafe. For a heartbeat, no one speaks. The clock ticks once, the vent hums, the coin sears a circle into my skin. And in the silence after that word, I can feel the story in the room tilt. Just a fraction, just enough that for once, I'm not the only one seeing where the cracks really are. The word craziness still hanging in the air when the attending psychiatrist leans forward and, for the first time, looks more at him than at me. Her tone shifts into something I recognize from the day they put the bracelet on my wrist. Measured, clinical, careful in a way that means every syllable might end up in a note. Mr. Hart, she says, I want to be clear about something. We have serious concerns about a potential pattern of financial exploitation and psychological manipulation involving your niece and, previously, your sister. The coin in my palm goes very still. Even my pulse seems to pause to listen. And, she adds, your behavior, both historically, as reflected in public records, and in this meeting today, raises questions about your own stability. For a second, he just stares at her, like he's not sure he heard correctly, like the script skipped a line and he can't find his place. The risk manager folds his hands on the table. Our duty of care is not only to provide treatment, he says, it's also to protect patients from undue influence. That includes influence exerted by family members who may have their own impairments or conflicting interests. My uncle laughs. It comes out high and sharp, almost a bark. Undue influence, he repeats. Conflicting interests, that's insane. I am the only stable one in this family. He jabs a finger toward me without looking at me. She's sitting in a psych ward talking about imaginary theft, and you're lecturing me about stability? The legal liaison opens her folder, flips to a page, and reads without looking up. In 1998, she says, you were admitted for acute psychosis with agitation following a domestic incident. The record notes disorganized thought, persecutory content, and impaired impulse control. Acute psychosis with agitation. The exact phrase might as well be written in neon. That was an overblown reaction to a bad breakup, he snaps. You dig up one incident from my 20s and pretend it defines me? I've functioned perfectly well for decades. I have a business, I manage finances, I take care of people. His voice is rising, his face flushed. A vein in his temple starts to stand out, pulsing in time with the clock. Morales watches him with open focus now, her pen still. And the restraining order, the risk manager says. From 2004, it describes unpredictable rages and gaslighting. Can you speak to that? That woman was unstable, he says immediately. Vindictive. She weaponized the courts to get what she wanted. You have no context for any of that. He glances around this table, breathing faster. His fingers drum on the edge of his folder in a rapid, uneven rhythm. What about the timing of the power of attorney for your sister? The psychiatrist asks. You obtained it shortly before her medical decline. Can you explain why? Because she asked me to help, he says. Because she couldn't handle it alone. And the transfers from her accounts into your LLC, she asks? Many of which appear to coincide with her hospitalizations and later with your niece's attempts to review the records. His jaw clenches so hard I can see the muscles move under the skin. I was consolidating, he says too quickly. Protecting assets. Keeping her from making erratic decisions. I had to move fast. You have no idea what it's like dealing with someone like that. Someone like that. He still won't say my mother's name. I did what I had to do to keep things from blowing up, he adds, voice now a low growl. Just like I'm trying to keep her from blowing up her future now. He slams his palm on the table again. The water in the carafe shivers, tiny waves hitting glass. Mr. Hart, the psychiatrist says, tone tightening, I'm going to ask you to lower your voice. I am not the problem here, he shouts. The word not echoes off the walls. I brought her to you. I called for help. And now you're all sitting here diagnosing me because she found some old paperwork and a bitter ex? You're crazy if you believe her delusions over my authority. The risk manager gives the barest nod to the corner of the room. Until now, I'd barely registered the 2 security officers standing by the door, uniforms neat, posture relaxed, but ready. They straighten. One steps a little closer, hands open and visible. Sir, we need you to take a step back from the table, he says calmly. My uncle ignores him. He leans forward instead, knuckles whitening on the wood. This is a setup, he says, words tumbling faster. She's poisoned you against me. You're all in on it. You've been listening to her twisted stories, and now you think you see something that isn't there. That is exactly what she does. She infects people. She makes you doubt what you know is true. His eyes are wild now, flicking from face to face. He finally drills into mine. This is your doing, he spits. You and your spreadsheets and your late-night emails. You couldn't just grieve like a normal person. You had to turn it into an investigation, into a witch hunt. You'd burn this whole family down just to prove you're not crazy. The word lands all over again, but this time it doesn't stick to me. It hovers between us, ugly and aimless. Sir, the security officer repeats, firmer, you need to sit back in your chair. He yanks his hands off the table and shoves his chair backward instead. The legs screech against the floor, a harsh, scraping sound that makes me flinch. He half rises, shoulders rolling like he's about to lunge. At who, I don't know. At me, at them, at the whole room. Security moves. One officer plants himself between my uncle and the rest of the table, hands still open, voice low. We're not going to do this, he says. You need to calm down. The psychiatrist clicks her pen and slips it into her pocket. When she speaks again, her tone has that same legal cadence I heard when she talked about my 72 hours. Given your current presentation, she says, and the information we have about your past episodes and recent behavior, I am concerned about your impulse control and potential risk to others. He barks out another laugh. I'm not a danger, he says. She is, she always has been. She's the one who… Dr. Chen, the risk manager says quietly, turning his head toward the doorway. Another figure appears there, a second psychiatrist, younger, wearing the same hospital ID and an on-call pager clipped to his pocket. He must have been waiting outside. I'd like you to perform an immediate evaluation, the attending says. Here. My uncle whirls on him. I am not your patient, he snarls. The newcomer's voice is calm, almost gentle. I'd like to ask you a few questions, he says. Can you tell me what you think is happening right now? What's happening is a conspiracy, my uncle snaps. That's what's happening. You're all colluding to strip me of my role, my authority, my rights, based on hearsay and vendettas. You don't know this family. You don't know what I've held together. The on-call psychiatrist nods slowly. So you believe multiple hospital staff, risk management, and legal are conspiring against you, he says, repeating it back. That they are not acting in good faith. Yes, my uncle says without hesitation. Have you felt this way in other institutions? The doctor asks. With courts, perhaps, former partners, other professionals? My uncle's mouth twists. They always take the unstable person's side, he says. They see tears and they stop thinking. You people are supposed to be rational, and you're falling for the same tricks. The on-call psychiatrist glances at the attending, then at security, then back at my uncle. In my clinical opinion, he says, you are exhibiting disorganized thought content, persecutory ideation, and impaired impulse control. Given your escalating agitation and the potential risk of harm to others in this setting, I'm going to place you under an emergency psychiatric evaluation. The words land with a terrible familiarity. Emergency psychiatric evaluation. The same legal engine that rolled over me 3 days ago is now turning in his direction. You can't do that, my uncle says, voice cracking. This is not, you don't have the authority. We do, the legal liaison says quietly. Under state statute, when a licensed physician deems there is imminent risk, we are authorized to initiate a temporary hold for evaluation. You will have rights explained to you. Security steps closer. My uncle steps back instinctively and hits the wall. His bravado fractures. "You're making a mistake," he says louder, more desperate. "This is all her. She's contagious. She's turning everyone against me. You people are supposed to see through that. You're supposed to know what crazy looks like." His voice cracks on crazy. It splinters the word right down the middle. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to sit," one officer says. "If you don't sit, we will help you." He doesn't sit. He lunges instead, not quite toward me, not quite toward the table, just forward, like motion itself will save him. They catch him, not violently but firmly. One hand on each arm, guiding more than grabbing. His folder slips from his fingers and hits the floor, papers spraying across the tile, emails, pamphlets, his script scattered. "Let go of me," he snarls. "This is illegal. I'll sue every one of you. I'll have your licenses. You think you can lock me up? You think you can write me down like you wrote her down?" The on-call psychiatrist recites rights in a calm monotone, while security steers him toward a waiting transport chair just outside the door. It's metal with padded arms and a wide belt. Soft restraints hang from the sides, unused. For the moment, "I am ordering a temporary detention for psychiatric evaluation," the doctor says. "You will be transported to the appropriate unit. You will be monitored for your safety and the safety of others." My uncle thrashes. One of his shoes squeaks against the floor, a high rubber sound. "I am not crazy," he shouts. "She is. She's the one. Look at her. Look at—" He jerks his chin toward me. His eyes find mine for a fraction of a second. There's fury there, and something else. Fear, naked and bright. The coin in my hand is steady. My heart is pounding against my ribs, but my body stays in the chair. I don't move. A nurse appears with the restraint kit. Soft cuffs that Velcro rather than lock. She clips them to the chair arms, motions to security. "Wrists only," she says. "Let's start there." They guide his arms down. He fights, but his strength is all in his voice now, not his muscles. "This is wrong," he roars. "You're imprisoning the wrong person. I'm not. The fabric straps wrap around his wrists. There's a small, decisive sound as the Velcro catches against itself. A quick rip and press that reminds me of the magnet seal on the unit doors. Soft but final. One cuff, then the other. That sound echoes in the conference room like a gavel. Security wheels him toward the hallway. His folder lies open on the floor, papers fanned out at my feet. For once, no one bends to pick them up. I sit there, coin burning a perfect circle into my palm, watching the man who narrated my decline being recorded now in someone else's handwriting, his words finally counted as symptoms instead of scripture. They wheel him out still shouting, the straps on his wrists holding while his words flail. The door swings closed behind the chair with a soft, heavy thud. For a moment, the conference room is just the tick of the clock and the faint hiss of the vent. No one looks at me right away. They're all looking at the empty doorway. Then the attending exhales, long and quiet. She picks up her pen again. "We'll need to debrief," she says to the room, "and document." Of course, document. Morales bends to gather the papers he spilled. Emails, pamphlets, his script now out of order. She stacks them with my friend's printouts into one neat pile, clips them together, writes something on a sticky note, and slaps it on top. "Chain of custody," she says under her breath, more to herself than to me. The risk manager turns toward me. "You're still on a 72-hour hold," he says. "That doesn't change based on what happened today. But what does change is how we interpret the information that led to it." The legal liaison adds, "We'll be filing a report with Adult Protective Services, and we're obligated to notify the probate court that there are concerns about your uncle's conduct as power of attorney." The words don't sink in all at once. They land in layers, like paper stacking on paper. After the conference, time shifts into weeks. The unit hums on, but my place in it loosened. I start meeting with a therapist who is not my uncle's audience. She sits in a small office off the ward, walls lined with books instead of posters, a plant in the corner that is somehow still alive. She asks questions no one has asked yet. Not just, "Do you feel people are out to get you?" but, "When did you first learn to doubt your own memory?" I tell her about the ER visits, the bills, the door smashed years before I was old enough to remember, only enough to feel the echo. About the way my uncle's version always arrived faster than anyone else's. I twist the brass coin between my fingers as I talk. It clicks softly against my wedding ringless hand. "What you're describing is gaslighting," she says. "Not a psychotic process. Anxiety, yes. Hypervigilance, yes. Trauma, absolutely. But you're tracking real discrepancies." Real. She doesn't say imaginary theft. She doesn't say delusion. When she talks about medication, she doesn't frame it as a cure for me being who I am. She talks about dialing down the alarm system, giving my body a break so my brain can sort signal from noise. We adjust a dose. We say yes to something for sleep. We say no to anything that flattens me into a ghost of myself. In her notes, she lets me read them sometimes. She writes trauma response, complicated grief, effects of prolonged psychological manipulation. She crosses out paranoia and scribbles in hyper-awareness. My chart grows addenda, little paragraphs in soft, careful language that still feel like sledgehammers. Previous collateral information from Uncle now considered unreliable due to undisclosed psychiatric history and potential financial conflict of interest. Patient's report of financial exploitation referred to hospital risk management and adult protective services. For once, the ink leans my way. One morning, Morales finds me in the day room with my notebook open and the coin resting on top. She smells like rain and copier toner, like she's been back and forth to the admin building. 2 things, she says, sitting on the bolted chair across from me. 1, APS opened a case. They'll be looking at his management of your mother's estate and your situation now. My stomach tightens, then eases. Okay, I say. 2, she continues. The probate court scheduled an emergency hearing. Our legal team submitted a statement about what we observed here. You won't have to attend. The judge has your chart and the risk report. I imagine a courtroom I'm not in, a judge reading affidavits instead of pamphlets. My uncle sitting at a table with no folder of my emails to wave like evidence. Weeks later, on a follow-up call in a quiet office with a landline and no bracelet on my wrist, I get the summary. His authority as power of attorney suspended. Control of the estate transferred temporarily to a neutral fiduciary, a court-appointed guardian with no family stories to protect, only numbers. The financial paper trail I tried to shout about in phone calls is now spread across someone else's desk, in labeled binders, tabbed, stamped, logged. Every transfer he thought he smoothed over is now an exhibit, black and white lines that don't care how charming he can sometimes be. My uncle stays in the system after I leave it. He's on another unit somewhere in this building or maybe across town, sitting in a different day room with different bolted chairs, telling a different audience what he thinks is happening. I don't gloat. I'm not that clean. There are nights in my new bed when I think about him pacing like that other patient, counting tiles, insisting everyone's conspiring. I hold the coin and remember my mother saying, "He had a bad time." He tells the story fast so you don't notice the holes. I can hold 2 truths at once now. He is a man with real mental health needs. He is also a man who used that same system like a weapon to keep control of things that were not his. Both can be true. Both are. Some relatives cling to his narrative anyway. My aunt sends a long message about stress and how hard this has been on him, and families should stick together. I don't respond. Others come quieter. My cousin leaves a voicemail that starts with, "I'm sorry," and ends with, "I should have asked you more questions instead of just nodding." I call her back. We talk about neutral things at first, weather, work, the ridiculousness of hospital food. Then I say, "I forgive you, but only for what she didn't know, not for what I won't let happen again." I accept what feels safe, I leave the rest. The neutral guardian helps arrange a small apartment for me, nothing fancy. 3rd floor, thin walls, a view of a parking lot, and a strip of sky. But the lease is in my name. The deposit comes from a check cut out of my mother's estate, signed by someone who has no reason to lie. On the first morning there, sunlight hits my new kitchen table. The wood is cheap, but the light makes it look almost golden. I spread my paperwork out like a different kind of altar. Copies of my amended chart, the paragraphs that say I was believed, eventually. Court orders from probate, judge's signature looping over printed text. Bank statements with my name on the account holder line, no one else is tucked behind it. In the center of the table, I set the brass coin, not hidden in my fist or under my pillow. Right there, flat on the wood, catching the light like a seal. Not of madness, of continuity. Weeks after discharge, I go back to the hospital one last time. Not in a van, not in a gown, in my own clothes, with my own keys in my pocket and my ID in my wallet, not on a band around my wrist. The automatic doors sigh open the same way. The intake desk still smells like coffee and disinfectant. The fluorescent lights still hum. I sign release forms for records, for billing, for whatever threads of me are still tied up in their systems. My signature looks like my mother's in the first letter and like mine everywhere else. On my way out, I pass a transport team wheeling someone toward evaluation. A woman about my age, hair matted from sleep, eyes wide and bright with the terror of being seen only through someone else's report. Our eyes meet for half a second. I don't say anything out loud. I just send a quiet wish in her direction. May your witnesses be better than mine at the start. May your record tell more than one person's version. Outside, the air is thinner and colder than I remember. I take the coin from my pocket, turn it once between my fingers, feel the familiar ridges bite my skin, and understand, finally, that sanity isn't a certificate anyone hands you. It's the slow, stubborn work of holding on to your own story, even when someone louder keeps trying to sign it out of your hands.